This story is by far the most disturbing thing that has ever happened to me. It occurred 3 years ago. I am a swim coach for a summer league team. It is a decent job. It helps pay my college tuition, and I enjoy teaching younger kids how to swim and compete. It was mid-October at this time, and about 4 times a year, the Summer Swim League had meetings to discuss budgets, rule changes, and other boring things like that. Normally, the team president attends these meetings, but I received an email from him requesting I be there because he was out of town. It would be a $50 fine for our team if we didn't have a representative present, so I agreed. The meeting was at 7, and I got off from my other part-time job at 6 that evening. I made a quick stop at a fast food joint to grab a bite quickly before heading to the conference. It was quite a ways, so I was running a few minutes late. The meeting took place at another team's location, a real hoity-toity country club and subdivision. When I turned off the construction-ridden highway into a neighborhood, it was like entering a different world. Immediately, 6, 7, 8 bedroom stone houses came into view. Some of them were like mini castles. I've always been a guy content living in a typical lower middle class neighborhood, but I must admit, seeing those estates did make me feel briefly envious. I pulled into the central office lot. There were plenty of parked cars, so I figured I was in the right place. I approached the front of the building and rang the buzzer. No one answered. I rang it again and waited a bit longer before trying the double door. To my surprise, it was unlocked, so I walked in. The lobby was empty, and no receptionist was sitting at the front desk. There were perfectly proportioned, lonely couches about 20 feet in front of me, and a roaring fire on what looked like a flat HD TV screen placed inside a fake hearth. Elevators were to my right, a deep, narrow hallway to my left. I remember looking at my phone and seeing that it was 7:07 when I got out of my car, so I was a few minutes late. I assumed it must have been the last meeting of the day, so the receptionist clocked out and the meeting had already started. I decided to walk down the hallway to hopefully find someone or the location of my meeting. I passed several conference rooms. At each one, the doors were wide open, revealing empty rooms with the lights turned off. I kept on walking down the hallway, took a right, and found a conference room with closed double doors. By looking at the carpet, I noticed light seeping onto the floor from inside the room. This must be the place. I quietly opened the door, and this is when things got weird. I barely got a look in the room when the lights flickered off. I was momentarily stunned. The most bizarre scene fell before my eyes. The area was now dimly lit by 100 or so candles spread throughout the room. About 40 people were seated at maybe 5 or 6 small, equally distributed, circular tables. Each table had long white tablecloths spread along the surface, with a candelabra of 7 lit candles placed in the center. But what disturbed me the most was the people's attire. Everyone in the room was dressed in a black robe with a hood, and on their faces were masks. Mirror masks, with no eye holes, no facial characteristics whatsoever, simply mirrors covering their faces. While sitting at the tables, everyone was holding hands, but several of their heads jerked and stared at me after I opened the door. A few of them tilted their heads in confusion, but of course, I didn't see any faces. Only flickering candlelight reflected in the mirrored masks. I barely had 1 foot in the room and only contemplated the scene for a total of 2 seconds. I remember verbatim the words that went through my mind. Oh, I must be in the wrong room. Oh, fuck no! I closed the door and ran for my life back down the hallway towards the front door. There were 3 possible exits at the front. I first tried the single door closest to me all the way to the right. It was locked, dead bolted from the inside. After bouncing off that door with as much fluency in my sprinting as possible, I ran towards the double doors, where I originally entered the building. I pushed on them with all my might. Twice. But they were both locked. "Shit! Shit!" I whispered to myself. Desperately, I ran towards the final single door at the far left of the front entrance. I shoved the stainless steel panic bar with all my might. The door flew open, and without physically expressing the instant relief I was feeling inside, I hightailed it towards my car. It was a foggy, dark night, and the parking lot had very few street lamps. In my terrified state, I slammed on the gas and unknowingly drove in the wrong direction. I never have been good with navigating. I turned onto a dark, tapered road, going slightly downhill for about 50 feet. I knew this was incorrect. I quickly performed a U-turn, and in the middle of it, when my headlights were facing perpendicular to the direction I needed to drive, I noticed a flagpole in the middle of a grassy field about 100 feet away from me. I was on a golf course trail. I quickly drove back up the trail where I started in the parking lot. I gained my senses and headed for the exit. I had to drive past the front door again. As it approached, I was dreading that a hooded figure would chase after me, but luckily, no one was there. I immediately turned out into the subdivision and back onto the highway. This time, with a big sigh, finally expressing my relief. I called the team president the next day and apologized for not making the meeting. I told him I must have gone to the wrong building, because no one was there. I dared not tell him the truth about what I saw. What would I say? I offered to pay the $50 fine out of my own pocket, but he told me not to worry about it. He forgot to call me to let me know that the vice president was able to go to the meeting after all, and they didn't need me there. It turns out, there was another office building at the opposite end of the subdivision. That's where my meeting was. So it was half true. I was just in the wrong building. Mountains of questions pop up as I relive this experience. What the hell were those people doing in that candlelit room? Why did the lights turn off right as I opened the door? Was it a coincidence? Were they at that moment starting their ritual? Or were they hiding something else from outsiders? But if that was the case, why wasn't the door locked? Who locked the double doors from the time I entered the building until the time I tried to escape? I was not in the building for longer than 3 minutes, yet in that time, someone must have electronically barred those doors. Why was the other front door on the far left entrance still unlocked? Was it a mistake? Or was the receptionist locking up and just hadn't gotten to the other door yet? And the most unnerving question: what would have happened if I wasn't able to get out of the building? I am very happy I do not know the answer to that question. I've only told this story to a few close friends. No one on the swim team knows about it. I'm a pretty private person, and I try my hardest to keep my work life as drama-free as possible. My team has a swim meet at that country club next summer. I'm not worried about attending their pool, but you can bet I won't go anywhere near that office building again. One thought, however, does creep me out. When my team comes to compete at their pool next summer, whether it be parents or workers, Will anyone secretly recognize me as the man who interrupted their meeting that night? Thanks for listening, and remember, the most unsettling stories are lost in the ghost towns of our psyche.